Joining us now, the one, the only, the man himself, J.T. Williamson. J.T., what's going on today, man?
Twice this week, brother. I was on with them on Cruising the Coast and hanging out with you today on a Friday. What's going on?
Well, we're just watching this weather headed our way eventually. Looks like they've pushed back landfall now to 7 p.m. It was earlier forecast to hit Louisiana at 2. Now it's 7 and gaining some steam. Looks like sustained winds of 100 miles an hour by the time it cracks up on the coast there in Louisiana.
So does that help the Ole Miss Alabama game or not?
Looking at the latest chart, they moved the game back, from 5 to 6:30,
Sure.
Same time as the state kickoff. But now, looking at the chart, Rhino, it looks like it is right on top, literally the eye, on top of Oxford at 7 o'clock, 30 minutes into the game. So I'm not sure if that it turns out to be a wise decision. I get it. You have to sort of plan for that. But it doesn't look good for game time. I would say it hurts Ole Miss, JT, just because of the passing game. You got to believe it's a little bit more difficult. But they're talking 40-mile-an-hour winds.
Yeah, that and Alabama's got 19 running five-star running backs. So
Always.
They played just about every high school game last night.
Yeah.
And that's really become a new thing. Anytime there's weather, just about the entire. Didn't everybody play last night, Rhino? Is anybody holding out for tonight?
There are a couple teams, I believe, in the northeast corner of the state that are going to try to play tonight, and I think there's one or two games that moved to Saturday in the hopes that the rain would be out of the way. But, yeah, the vast majority played last night.
Yeah. We had Stephen Gagliano.
Show last night.
Yeah, Stephen Gagliano came on the show yesterday and talked about all the matchups, all scheduled for last night. Several that got canceled, just totally canceled. And not rescheduled. If they're not district games, I think that's kind of the play.
Yeah, I tell you what it is. My honest opinion, and been doing this forever and ever and ever, but in the MHSAA for the past 6 years, it's about the lightning delay, and that's what these coaches don't want to get into.
Yeah.
And why all of a sudden 6 years ago we decided lightning was the thing, I get it. I understand it. I'm not making fun of it or anything about it. But if you get a lightning strike, even when I've actually been in a game where it's past us, the storm of the front is past us, and we're still in lightning delays as it's moving away from us. Because if it's within, 15 miles, Rhino, we have to wait 30 minutes every time there's a strike. And it can postpone a game for up to 2 or 3, 4 hours. It's nuts. So that's why they do that a lot on Thursdays now.
Yeah, it makes sense. I know on the golf courses now, they all have lightning warning systems and sirens. And I think that thing's set at where I play, I think it's set to 6 miles. So that's pretty close. But, yeah, and I think they have to have no detection for 15 minutes before they'll sound the horn to let you go back out. But
I don't know where you play, Gerard, but I'll share a story with you if you want to have it.
Yeah, go ahead.
I haven't played golf in years, probably 6 years. I don't know why. I just quit.
Yeah.
But one day I was on, I think I was on number 16. Is that the uphill on the backside going at Caroline, where you come up by Catlett, when you come up there by Catlett Road?
I know what you're talking about. Yeah, I think it is.
The one that climbs the hill, and then you start going parallel with the road.
Yep.
Got up there, hit the most beautiful shot. Second shot on the green, I'm like 4 feet away, and I'm, pumping my chest, and, carrying on with my buddy. I'm fixing to birdie this bad boy. And, we hear a little thunder off in the background, but it's sunshiny, we're not thinking anything.
Yeah.
We get up on top of that hill. I'm getting ready to sink that putt. And if you've ever been close to a lightning strike, you see it and you hear it all at once. It's like light and then just this boom all at the same time. I'm getting ready to sink that putt, and there's a lightning strike just like that, like right there, boom. I leave the golf ball there. My buddy leaves his golf ball. We get in we are still holding our putters. We're driving across greens and tee boxes, trying to get back to the clubhouse. It scared us so bad. I mean, we was that close. So I've always said, if you can hear thunder, you can get struck by lightning. It's true.
No doubt. No doubt. Yeah. I was playing in
I didn't know what was on y'all's mind today, but I just hang out with you today. So tell me whatever y'all want to talk about.
Well, I got to tell this quick golf story. I was playing in a tournament at Annandale. One of these charity tournaments is just packed, lots of players. I think it may have been an FCA, Fellowship of Christian Athletes tournament. And number 2 is a great par 3 out there. And there was a close to the hole prize, and I hit one. I had a great shot. I was 2 inches from the cup, literally. And
won the money.
And I'm thinking I'm winning the money. I get inside, and I noticed that there's another name on the card that scratched mine out. That's somebody else. And so I went to the pro and said, man, are you sure I hit this thing within 2 inches? He said, oh, well, this guy hit it in the hole, hit a hole in one in the tournament. So that pretty much killed my 2-inch deal. But, JT, we've been talking this morning about some of the crazy stuff. We got crazy Nancy Pelosi that's wanting to put together this commission and make it a permanent institution of the federal government that analyzes the capacity of the president and I guess can have him removed from office and invoke the 25th Amendment if this commission recommends it.
That's so they can make Kamala the president. Just as soon as if she wins, they can make her the president.
That's what Rhino said. First deal, let's get rid. Right. We're going to get Trump out, and then we're going to do all kinds of stuff. Then we're going to get Biden in there and get him out, and Kamala will instantly become the president. I think that's plausible theory.
Can I say something real quick?
Sure.
And it's going to come off. It's going to sound bad. It's going to sound close to racist, but it's not. Kamala Harris is not an African American. She is not a black woman. Her father was Indian, and her father was Asian, and her mother was Indian. She is not a black woman. Okay? The media needs to stop telling this lie. It's not true, and I don't understand why they try to portray her as something that she is not.
They're running with it, man.
You think you should be proud of her heritage. An Asian Indian? I mean, I get it's a minority. I'm not saying that she's not a minority, but she's not an African American woman.
Yeah.
And every time they talk about her, they refer to her as a black woman.
Yeah, she's a POC, a person of color. I'm not even exactly sure. Aren't we all got color? Person of color. What fits into that category? A POC.
I've been called a redneck most of my life. So, yeah, I guess so.
Oh my gosh, a POC.
Look, Gerard, I tell you this. I believe this. Either Trump's going to pull a landslide, or we're going to be caught up in a mess that may last through Christmas and the New Year.
Yeah, that's my fear. That's my fear, is that with all this voting irregularity and ballot nonsense going around, we're not going to know unless it's just so far out in front for one candidate or the other. I'm hoping it's Trump, of course. We're not going to know, and that's chaos is going to ensue. It really does bother me. We're going to see the streets just be filled with wackos trying to do crazy stuff.
I certainly hope not, but I'm afraid no matter what happens in this election, we're going to see rioting and we're going to see problems because the media in this country encourages that. And the media is very dishonest to the American people. I mean, they won't tell the truth about Mike Espy and what he went through. And, they continue to portray people in a light. They won't tell the truth, and it bothers me. Hey, it's Friday. I want to hang out with y'all if I can.
Yeah, absolutely. We got a little break right here. We'll come back with more on the JT Show with JT himself. Stay with us. Continuing our discussion with the great JT. So, Richard from Wiggins, JT, wants to know, did you go back to the green to make the putt when the lightning?
No, that thunderstorm set in and we went home. But I tell you, that was the day I learned real quick about, and I said it on the radio for years after that. If you can hear thunder, you can be struck by lightning, man.
Yeah.
And that's the truth. That is the truth. And more people are struck by lightning in the summertime by summertime thunderstorms than anything else.
Yeah. Oh, there's no question. And golf courses aren't great places to be when lightning and thunder around. They're magnets for it. And heck, every year. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I didn't get to talk about this. Obviously, I wasn't on the air that day. I was getting a little blood transfusion on Tuesday when Eddie Van Halen. They announced that Eddie Van Halen died, and I know it's kind of late to the show here about this. But if I'd have been on the air that day, obviously we'd have talked about it tremendously.
Yeah.
The first concert I ever saw was Van Halen here in Jackson in 1984 when it was Eddie's birthday, and they were doing the tour with the 1984 album, Jump, Panama, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The last recorded studio album they did with David Lee Roth, and Eddie was, he was it for a person my age growing up, and consider him the greatest of all time, a guitarist, and not taking anything away from Eric Clapton or B.B. King or one of my favorite guitarists, David Gilmour from Pink Floyd, but Eddie Van Halen was it. I mean, he did it. He did everything in my lifetime that a guitar. I mean, he was the greatest of all time for someone of my lifetime, and I just hate that his lifestyle caught up with him so quickly. I'd always hoped that one day they would get back together and they would do David Lee Roth songs and Sammy Hagar songs and do this massive tour. But it was just kind of hard to hear there on Saturday. I mean on Tuesday that we lost Eddie Van Halen, one of the greatest guitarists of all time. And I know people aren't going to agree with me. They're going to say this guy was better or that guy was better. We can all argue that forever, but Eddie was the GOAT in my lifetime, and still my favorite band, Van Halen, growing up.
65 years old, Eddie was.
Left us too early.
Yeah, incredible talent. You're right. Arguably the greatest rock guitarist of all time.
Couldn't read a lick of music. Couldn't read sheet music.
Right.
None of it.
Right.
But could play the piano. He could play the keyboards, the piano, and the guitar like no one else. It was just an unbelievable loss.
Yep. Incredible performers.
Hit the rock world hard. I sent out a tweet. I don't know if any of y'all saw that. I think it was Tuesday night. I sent out a tweet, actually a picture of me and my wife and some listeners backstage. You may not know this about me, Gerard. I used to be a rock and roll disc jockey, and I was the program director for the big rock station. And we went backstage at Pensacola, the opening tour of Balance. That was their last tour that they did with Sammy Hagar.
Yeah.
And Eddie was really struggling. He was sober. He was trying to get his life together. He had a lot of problems with his hip. And, of course, when we went backstage, they were all like, nobody take any alcohol back there. Eddie's trying to be sober. And he was. He had been through treatment. He was trying to get his life back together, doing better. This was before his hip replacement. But I sent out a picture. I said, can you pick out the rock and roll disc jockey program director, soon to be talk show host? So if y'all haven't seen that on Twitter, there's actually a picture of me.
I did.
Hugging up on Michael Anthony. Yeah, that was pretty cool. Long time ago. That was a young JT.
That was awesome. So speaking of the young JT, Mark from Madison wants to know what kind of car you drove when you cruised McDowell Road.
My first one was a 77 red Trans Am.
Okay.
That was my first car. I pushed it down the street, bought it from my neighbors for $1,000. It wouldn't run. I pushed it down the street, had it running that afternoon.
Man, that was big time. 77 Trans Am. That's big time because
it was. Yeah, considering it was like 83 when I had it, the car wasn't that old.
Yeah.
But the best car I ever cruised McDowell Road with was a 68 Camaro.
Whew, man.
Mercedes-Benz Silver. It was a beautiful car. It had about 425 horses under the hood.
Yeah.
That was pure horsepower, no nitrous. Drove that for the longest time and won a lot of grudge races with that.
Wow.
I'm an old South Jackson boy, Gerard.
Well, wait now. You may not know. I'm a Westie. I'm a West Jackson boy. I grew up off Bowling Street, and so I cruised Shoney's. And in 1974, I was in like a 69 Nova, with no bench seats,
car.
right? No power steering or power brakes. And I had it jacked up a little bit, though. You got to have that in the oversized tires. We used to do the 70s or whatever it was.
the Krager rims.
Yeah, exactly. And did that Shoney's. That was big time.
Shoney's was a little ahead of me now.
Okay, I know.
I remember the Gibbs Pizza Palace restaurant.
Yeah.
Plaza, but I don't remember Shoney's.
Yeah, the Papa Gibbs. That's right, over there in Western Plaza. Man, has all that changed now? That's really a different deal. But so I was a little ahead, but I understand McDowell came along, and that was your
Jackson is.
Just talking about that this morning.
Where we grew up and the potential that Jackson has and still has, I believe. And I can say that because it is my hometown. I mean, I've lived in Madison for over 30 years, and I guess it's my hometown now. But Jackson will always be where I was born and where I grew up. I could take a lot of lessons from a lot of other cities around the state, but that has to come with leadership. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. So Greg in Madison says he was there too, JT, and he was great. I think probably talking about the concert, I'm thinking. So I'm not sure, but I believe that. Oh, yeah. He said he drove a 1981 Monte Carlo 350 4-barrel up and down McDowell Road. That's high cotton too. Of course, that's when gas was about 35 cents a gallon, because one hit on that accelerator to open up those butterflies on that 4-barrel. That was about 2 gallons, wasn't it, back in those days? So.
It was the good old days. Thank God they had the old drag strip where Pearl High School is now. Probably kept us all from getting killed. You could go out there, pay $5 a carload, and you could race at the drag strip. And that's what I preach that all the time. Go race at the racetrack, guys. I'm not against racing, but do it at the racetrack, not on the roads. That's not the place to do it.
Well, in West Jackson,
it was a bunch of our lives.
In West Jackson, it was Industrial Drive before it was all built out. Remember that, off of Bowling Street by the airport, and people would just be crazy running those cars over there.
This is no joke. We used to race down in Byram, below Byram, down in all that industrial area. There was a great place. And the cops would actually come out there, would be there just to keep people from drinking and stuff. And they'd sit there and watch us race and let us do it to keep us safe.
Another text on the C Spire line here says he had a 77 442 rode up and down. That was an Oldsmobile. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Up and down McDowell.
What did that used to stand for? 4-barrel, 4-speed, and something else. I can't remember. I have to get on the internet and look.
I don't know what the 2 was.
442s used to have those 3 shifters in them. Those 3 sticks in them, if you remember.
I like the candy apple colors with the white.
4-barrel carb, 4-speed manual transmission, and dual exhaust.
Oh, okay, that's right. Dual exhaust.
That's it. I couldn't remember the 2.
Very cool.
Couldn't remember the 2. Car Talk continues on the JT Show coming up next.
All right, man. You want to hang around with us?
Sure. I'm having fun. It's Friday. I feel good.
Stay with us another segment, JT. We appreciate you coming on today. And listeners, please stay with us. Hope you're enjoying the show. That is awesome. Man,
hey,
oh, man.
Can I say one thing before we get cranked up?
Yeah.
I want to say a shout out to one of the greatest people I know. And he FaceTimed me yesterday, and that's Sid Salter. He went through what I'm going through right now. Actually, he went through it a little bit differently, a little bit more complex than what I've been through. But Sid's kind of like my warrior, my partner here through this. And he called me yesterday just to give me some encouragement, and just told me to keep fighting and doing those types of things. Just, you know how in life you don't know you really have a true friend until you get through something that kind of does this thing to you, Gerard. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
You go through something like this, and somebody else that's been through it wants to help you and wants to encourage you. And that call yesterday from Sid was just kind of just made my whole week just to talk to him. I hadn't talked to him because I know everything they've been going through, trying to get school and football and COVID, and just like every other school. So it had been a while since I heard from him, but got a call from him yesterday, just a big encouraging call, and talking to him, it just really hit home. And just wanted to say, Sid, thank you, man.
That's awesome.
Means a lot to me. Means a lot to me.
Well,
and I mean that in a good way, because I got a great prognosis. I just got to go through it.
Right.
And
right.
There's going to be a lot of time, a lot of downtime, a lot of time by myself, not around anybody. Even if there wasn't COVID, I'm still would have to go through a lot of isolation, which I'm going to have to do. So I'll be bugging everybody I know on my address list in my phone. So if you're, I don't even know if you're on my address list, Gerard, but you may get a phone call from me. Just have somebody to talk to.
Anytime. Anytime, 724, my friend.
I just appreciated that call yesterday from Sid. It made my day. Y'all still haven't told me what you're talking about today.
Thanks for sharing that.
I got an idea if you don't have one.
Well, we've been talking a little politics to get cranking up, but please, what's your idea? Go ahead. Your deal.
This new flag. You know, we got to vote on it.
Mm-hmm.
I really like this new flag. I've seen the commercials. Whoever did that commercial, I love the guy with the bumper sticker and on the back of the 4-wheel drive slinging mud. You know, I get people that still are ticked off about the old flag gone. I understand that. I'll always understand that. I also understand the joy of the people that have with the new flag, and I'm one of those people. I want to see the new flag fly again, and I just want to encourage people to vote on this, to make sure that you get down the ballot and vote on that, because I think they picked the right flag.
I mean,
opinion.
lot of as you said, JT, a lot of opinion, a lot of passion. And it's going to be interesting to see how this thing shakes out. You know, I personally believed it was time for a change, and wrote an op-ed. Yeah, I wrote an op-ed on it, frankly, and published it in Clarion Ledger and on our news, on News Mississippi, and it got distributed around the Capitol. And I kind of stated my case and the reasons why I supported change. No doubt, I sure did.
Look. And hey, guess what? You can still fly the old flag if you want to.
Right.
If you own a business and you want to fly the old flag, fly it.
Yeah.
That's no problem. Nobody said you can't. But the state of Mississippi had to do something. We had to. There's no reason to go back to that. But I just want to say how much that new flag has grown on me. And I think they picked the right flag, and I hope this Mississippi. I know there's some people that like the Stennis flag. I know there are people that like the river flag, but this is the flag they came to, and I hope people get behind it, rally behind it, vote for it. And I think it looks good. Where I've seen it fly, I think it looks good. I think it represents us well.
Yeah, Cindy from Panola wants you to know that she's with you on the flag. I'm with JT on the flag. She just texted in. Sheila from Hattiesburg doesn't like the flag and says she can't believe that you do. But look, I've said from the beginning, JT, we ain't going to find one single flag that we're all going to agree on. No way.
Let me say something else. The old flag was gone.
Right.
I got news for everybody that's listening. The old flag was done. That flag's never coming back.
Right.
The legislature
done.
did away with that flag, and it's done. That's history. It's over with. So we've got to come up with a new one, and I like the new one. I'm just saying that I support the new flag, the one that they came up with, and I know a lot of people were behind the river flag or the Stennis flag, but I think they hit the right one. But for people that are still clinging to the old one, fly it in your front yard, fly it, put it on your car, do whatever you want to do. That's fine. Nobody's saying you can't. But the state of Mississippi wasn't going to fly it anymore, and wasn't flying it anyway.
Right. You couldn't find it anyway. That's absolutely right. Very few, a little bit around the Capitol complexes, but like hardly any schools, very few cities, in front of their buildings, it pretty much had done away with it. And it was kind of silly, if you think about it, that we have this official state flag that nobody flies. Is what it becomes.
That was my whole point. So let's get a flag that we can fly.
I agree.
And again, like I said, man, that flag, the old flag has its place in history. There's no doubt. But it's past us now. It had passed us now. Anyway, I don't want to start a flag thing again.
No,
today, but I do like the new flag a lot.
Yeah, so we got a text on the C Spire text line, JT. I would vote for a possum hanging by his tail in a tree just to make this go away.
Well, I tell you how you make it go away, folks. You vote for the new flag, and then we don't have to hear about it anymore.
Larry in Jackson says, will the universities fly it with God in God we trust on it?
Absolutely.
I think they will too. I absolutely do. And look, there will be people, and JT, they'll gripe about that. There will be folks that will object to that, and that's fine. They'll just have to object to it at that point. But
that was how they made the deal. That's how they made the deal in the legislature.
No question.
They brought some of the people to the party to vote for the new flag, to vote to change the flag, was they said, I'm not changing it unless we put in God we trust on it. And that was part of the deal.
No question. On the 662, I stand with JT on the new flag. I think it's beautiful.
Yep. Hey, folks, y'all, remember, we're going to have some wind. I don't think we're going to have any bad weather. I think South Mississippi may deal with some tornadoes and things like that. So just pay attention to this thing. Man, our hearts go out to those people in Louisiana. Look, I rode to Houston a couple of weeks ago. Lake Charles is still tore up. From Laura, I believe, is the one that tore it up. And now this thing is bearing down on them right now.
Yeah.
Those folks in South Mississippi, South Louisiana, our hearts and prayers go out to them. I saw a shot from an airplane that showed all the blue tarps down there in Lake Charles, and now they're fixing to catch it again, man.
Yeah, we were kind of tracking it, hoping it currently is projected to stay a little bit east, which hopefully means that same area will be spared of the worst weather. But it's 7 o'clock tonight, and that bothers me because that means it spins in the Gulf a little longer than thought. And that could be good or bad, depending on the conditions, of course. But we'll see where that goes. All right. So the Lipe Well and Supply wanted to know, JT, if you knew about excluding brown M&Ms as part of the contract with Van Halen. I know a lot of those performers do have very.
I can tell you why that happened if we got time after the break.
Yeah.
I know we're about on the break, but I'll tell you why they did that, and they weren't being a pain in the butt. They actually had a reason for them to make them take the brown M&Ms out, and I'll tell you why.
All right, we're going to take a break. We'll come back. JT will tell us why Eddie Van Halen's contract said no brown M&Ms backstage when we come back. JT joining us this hour. All right, JT, so tell us about the brown M&Ms. What's the secret?
All right, you're talking about with Van Halen. Everybody knows that their writer back in the 80s said that backstage they wanted M&Ms and all the brown M&Ms removed. And everybody kind of, critiqued them for that was just ridiculous and they shouldn't do that. And that was just them being pains in the ass of the promoters because they were all millionaires and all this stuff. All right. Remember I told you about the tour in 1995, the Balance Tour? The picture I put out on Twitter? Mm-hmm. That was the last tour they had with Sammy Hagar. Van Halen on that tour was the first band to use a Jumbotron on that tour with the Jumbotron behind them. They were the first band to do that. And back in the 70s and 80s, Van Halen was discovered by Gene Simmons of Kiss.
Didn't know that, yep.
He heard him at a bar in Pasadena, California, tried to get them signed. They never would sign them, and finally they ended up signing with Warner Brothers after one of their execs heard them at a bar, just jamming.
Yep.
But in the 70s and especially in the 80s, Van Halen, their stage setup was more elaborate than anybody touring. I mean, it was like 10, 18-wheeler loads of all the lighting, the lighting, the speakers, the amps. It was just this massive thing that had to be put together so they could do a concert. And they would do concerts in Jackson at the Coliseum or Shreveport or even some of the smaller places, Tupelo, places like that. And they were touring in the 80s. And of course, they were always promoted by different promoters. So the way they would know how they needed to go back and check to make sure that everything was done correctly with their sound systems, their lighting, because it was so elaborate. And if they knew that the promoter had read the writer, had read the contract, and done everything that they wanted done for this just massive sound system, lighting system, and stage system that they had, they would tell them no brown M&Ms in the bowl, and they would go check that. That was sort of like a litmus test. That way they would know if the promoter had actually taken the contract and the writer serious as to how much they would have to go back with their sound crews, their guys, and what they would have to go back and check, and what they had to go back and check with the sound system, the lighting system, and the stage system if they had actually done everything that was important to them. The brown M&Ms weren't that important to them, but that was a way that they could check to make sure that the contract was fulfilled to the point that the concert would come off without a hitch. Because Eddie was a stickler about that, about it sounding the way it needed to sound, and because of the complexity of the system, it had to be done correctly. And that's where the brown M&Ms came from. That is a true story.
That makes sense. Fascinating. So Mike in Richton, he pegged it. Before we went to the break, he said they took out the brown M&Ms to make sure they read the whole contract.
That's correct.
Interesting.
That is exactly right. That way they knew that they read the whole contract, but it was more about the stage and the sound system and the lighting system, because Ed was such a stickler for that, because he wanted it right.
I got you. Makes perfect total sense.
That was where it came from.
That is interesting.
They weren't being a pain in the ass. They were literally trying to make sure that they were done right and correctly. Because the promoter got part of he got part of the door too, man.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of fingers in the pie.
It went back then. Sure.
Wow.
Sure, man. Back in those days, you remember the days. Led Zeppelin, they had their manager Peter Grant, who was just the biggest British jerk in the world, and these promoters would steal from him. And I mean, he would threaten to kick their ass if they didn't get right with them on the money. I mean, it was those promoters back in those days, in the 70s and 80s, were notorious for doing stuff like that.
Well, you remember
the song remains the same. you can see where Peter Grant got into it with the promoter. Claimed
Well,
the
I don't
money
know.
was stolen.
Well, remember the group Badfinger from the 70s and the tragedy there. Pete Ham hung himself because he found out that whoever was representing them had basically stolen their money. And when they realized they were totally broke, and there's a couple other groups that junk happened to as well, but that ended with 2 committing suicide of that group.
Think of the money Elvis would have had if the Colonel wouldn't have took it all away.
Very true. Very true.
Exactly.
JT, appreciate you joining us, man. You stay safe, get well. We'll talk to you again. Thanks.
Hail State, and hotty-toddy to you people out there, Gerard.